The reason why I'm using these slides, right, is because I always get asked questions of like, oh, how do we use heat maps? How do we use session recordings? And the way I tend to organize a lot of this kind of flow of how to use Crazy Egg is not how do I use Crazy Egg per se, but rather what questions am I trying to answer? And the questions are not just about what is on my website and what should I do with my website, but also what am I trying to learn about my customers, my visitors? Because ultimately, in business, everything should be about your customer and how to serve your customer better. And if you kind of organize it that way, then this becomes a much better forcing function for understanding what your website data is doing. So let's go through each of these questions and then talk about how each of those questions can be answered using those Crazy Egg features. So number one is who are your visitors, right? So not just who they are, like what devices are they on, where are they coming from as far as like that traffic, how do they initially hear about us, which country are they coming from, things like that. And the best feature to answer this is web analytics. Now you've probably already, if you've been in marketing for a while, you've probably already seen a system like Google Analytics 4. And if you already use Google Analytics 4, that's great. And this feature will still be helpful for you. But web analytics at a very bare minimum is basically to make it easy for you to see how much traffic you're getting, where that traffic is coming from, and to be able to get all that reporting in a way that's very easy to access. Google Analytics, the last couple of years has gone through a big redesign that has made it require a lot of configuration and a lot of wading through a lot of reports just to find the data you need. And we decided, you know what, let's just make something really, really easy for Crazy Egg users to understand because we really want to keep you focused on the right questions and not just trying to navigate to the right report. So if you go to Web Analytics, you'll by default open to this view for today's data only. And this is, by the way, this is a live Crazy Egg account for Quickspout.com. So this is real data, I'm not just showing you something that is dummy data. And you'll notice here that we have what's called the Astro Map. And basically, this is a real-time view of everyone that's on your website right now. Every single one of these astronauts is a real person. So right now we have a person from Canada on desktop visiting on Mac OS. And each of these planets that they're standing on is a planets or moons represents a page that they're on right now. So if one person on a page for best content management systems right now, but if you have a ton of traffic, you'll see a bunch of different astronauts and a bunch of different planets, so you can see which page is the most popular. And on top of that is if you see kind of a rocket dropping someone off, that's a referrer domain, say google.com, sending traffic to your site. And so you can visualize how many new visitors are being referred to at any given time. And if you click into any of these folks, you can actually not just get kind of the metadata on them, but you can actually see an initial event log on what each of these people have been doing. So you can kind of get a sense of like what is the journey that each person is doing. But that's kind of like seeing this at an individual level. But if you want to see this data at an aggregate level, we can look at that as well. So let's say we filter to the last 30 days. You won't see that Astro map anymore since it's not today only, but you will see a time series chart showing, say, unique visitors or page views or address session duration of the last, say, 30 days. And every time you select this new date selector, we're going to actually rerun a lot of your traffic analytics data through AI so that the AI can explain in understandable terms what's been going on with your drop traffic. So you can see here, right? And this is a live example, just saying, okay, engagement data likely skewed by bots, low intent traffic. Admittedly, this site has a lot of blog posts, so we see a lot of low intent traffic from there. We're seeing direct traffic is huge but leaks badly. Mobile users bounce more and engage less. And then you'll see additional details of not just metrics, but also recommendations how to improve those metrics as well. We really have a philosophy at Crazy Egg that we don't just want to throw AI at a problem, but we want to make sure that the AI is understandable so that it helps automate the process of getting value and insights out of your data, as opposed to just throwing numbers at you, which a lot of systems like Google Analytics do. Now, for any given amount of traffic, right, you're going to have a lot of variation within those or visitors, right? You have new versus returning visitors. You have people coming from different countries. You have people coming from different channels, arriving on different pages, or even arriving on different landing pages, right? And so for all of these, even for your UTM parameters for tracking URLs, you can not only see a high level summary of the most popular breakdowns for each of these segments, but if I jump into, say, most popular pages, then I can not only see the full kind of data breakout for the last 30 days with with the metrics for each of these. I can see how this is a new feature. I can see how this varied over time. So I can see here like okay, like the last kind of since June 30th, the traffic for these top pages has been spiking. I can select the different, metrics, say sessions or page views for each of these. I can see how this broke down as a percentage. So instead of saying what is the total number, I can say, okay, the other pages accounted for 66% on this given day, whereas the homepage accounted for 23% of this given day. And I can not only share this data to using a share link to someone who doesn't already have a Crazy Egg account, but I can also click export. And this will give me the option to either just export this data table, the data table as you see it, as a CSV, or I can export this to an XLSX, a spreadsheet, basically to analyze in Google Sheets or Excel. And that'll give me not just this data table option, but it'll actually give me the data breakdown day by day for this chart as well. So I can get that day by day data metrics rather, so I don't have to export that for every single day, which of course will save you a lot of time. Now, one additional feature, which you may not have noticed here, is something here called instant heat maps. And this is kind of what you should see as, I think of it almost as a heat map preview, because obviously we're going to look at heat maps later, but sometimes, you might have a bunch of pages, say a lot of blog posts, and you're not really sure if that blog post is getting enough traffic, a lot of enough engagement, enough clicks, but it's going to be worth setting up a full heat map report in order to analyze it. So by default, we're going to automatically create an instant heat map for every page that you have tracked in Web Analytics, so you can preview the traffic and the click data on that page and see if it's worth tracking. So say I click the instant heat map for this how to start a business blog post, and it'll open up a new heat map here. And then after a couple seconds of loading, it'll basically show you a sample of the last 30 days of traffic. And you can see here, right, is, okay, people are clicking around here. And ultimately, this is just enough data to show you, is it worth creating a heat map report for this? It samples data from the last 30 days, and it is capped at a certain number of page views. That it's not include a scroll map, it's not include data filters or the ability to export things like that. So think of it as a preview of whether it's worth creating a full heat map report, but it's not going to give you as much in-depth data. And we just create just enough data so that you can decide where you want to do that deeper analysis. But that's Web Analytics, right? And so that helps answer the question of, okay, who are your visitors? Where are they coming from? What devices are they visiting from, etc. But the second question my answer is, okay, once they come to your site, what do they do on your site? And so I really recommend the features that you use in order to understand what they do on your site are those heat maps, recordings, and using AI. And what for this, I actually think it's simpler to start with recordings because heat maps are probably our most popular feature. But kind of a way to describe this is that heat maps is an aggregated form of reporting where you can collect a bunch of different visitors and kind of see what patterns you see and you have in their engagement from a bunch of different visitors. But sometimes you need a microscope to look at one individual visitor to help you really kind of put yourself in your visitor's shoes and then see your website from their perspective and understand how they're experiencing your site. And recordings are that microscope. Each recording is an individual visitor that's coming to your site, and so you can see what it looks like from their perspective. Now, the thing about, recordings, right, is I can see all these video recordings here. I can see how long the session was, of recording was. I can see which page it started on, even things like, how much they bought, which device they were on, their country, things like that. But, depending on your plan, you might have hundreds or thousands of hours of recordings, rather, and it makes you kind of think, okay, I'm not going to watch all of these recordings. Can you just zero in on the right recordings for me so that I can understand really quickly what these recordings are telling me? And then I can decide which recordings are going to be worth actually and watching in more depth. And we've used filters for this, but we've also applied AI here. So number one is, you can apply what we call playlists. These are pre-populated filters in order to focus on frustrated visitors, desktop visits, mobile visits, engaged visitors. I can also use a date range selector or even like apply my own custom filters here. Say I want to focus in on people who came in from a specific campaign or people who did or did not convert, for example, to focus in on these people, say people who did the ghetto demo conversion. And on top of that, I want to see people who were new visitors. And every time I apply these new filters, the AI is going to rerun so that it can basically rewatch all of these recordings for you and then re-summarize them and then zero in even more on relevant recordings based off of the filters you apply. And you'll see here that the AI has recommended recordings you should watch. So we have a recording here which is showing high monetary value, $300 worth, plus clear frustration signals and two errors. Despite being only 30 seconds, they still visited 5 pages with 5 clicks. Okay, that sounds interesting to me. There's some good signals with some bad signals. I want to go in and get more information, get more detail. When I go to the recording, it'll open up an actual video player so I can see all of this. You'll notice that the recording itself has been annotated with all of these different events, and that I can actually see a list of those events as well. But I if I want to kind of understand, okay, like, sure, this is a 30-second recording, but you often see recordings, especially if you're doing product analytics, recordings might be 10 minutes, 30 minutes, even 2 hours. So how do I zero in on the main takeaways? And then if I want to jump to the specific parts of a recording that are going to be relevant for that insight, then what should I be paying attention to? And we've used an AI analysis for this as well. So it'll automatically summarize every single recording and it'll say, okay, dead click on work with us to just say broken or confusing clickable element. Or privacy page, triggered frustration with dead clicks and rage clicks. It'll summarize what it's seeing. And then on top of that is for the relevant interactions, it'll actually include timestamps. So I can actually go in and then see directly the interaction that is giving me the insight that the AI is finding here as well. So you'll see here how we're not just adding AI into the product, but we're incorporating it in a way where it complements and helps you get more information and more insight out of the data that you're already getting, without you having to be extremely fluent in how to, recognize patterns. So that's what I recommend doing with recordings. It's ideal if you want to kind of visualize what things look like from your visitor's perspective. It's also most effective if you have specific kinds of visitors which you're trying to study. Maybe you're trying to replicate a specific error, or you're trying to see what it looks like to go through a certain conversion flow, or things like that. Essentially, where where to point your microscope. That's what recordings are ideal for. But if you're doing kind of more exploratory analysis, like you want to look at a particular page, but you're not exactly, maybe you're kind of trying to see what you should be focusing on first, then heat maps tend to be a better fit tool for this. And let's look at heat maps live, right? Now, the thing about recordings, right, is and maybe it's worth going into this as well, is that if recordings, we kind of collect a small sample of these because we don't necessarily need to track every single recording. Although if you want to add more recordings to your plan, you can. But recordings work by basically taking a certain sample of the visits to your site, and you can allocate these across as many different domains as you want. And you can specifically focus on recordings on visitors who land on a specific page. You can have recordings ignore particular pages, especially if you say you can't look at certain pages for HIPAA or privacy purposes. But heat maps work a little bit differently because actually, you can set up heat maps to track every page view that's coming to your site, but you can also set heat maps to turn off for certain pages if you don't want to track them. And as a result, those don't count towards your quota, your monthly quota. And the reason why that's helpful is because unlike a lot of other heat map vendors, our heat maps are able to actually record up to 100% of visits by default. And it actually will default to collecting 100% of visits as well. And let me show you what that setting is. So let's go and create a brand new heat map. So for example, when I go to create a brand new heat map, it'll give me the option to create a heat map for pages behind for a certain page. Let's say I do www.quicksprout.com. I can name the heat map. I can decide which devices I want to create it on. And as best practice, I recommend creating a different heat map for each device type because behavior patterns can be different on each device type. I can set that heat map to start immediately or to schedule it for a future date. And I can set that heat map to either end collection after a certain number of days or when it hits a certain number of visits. And I can customize a lot of this as well. And speaking of scheduling, I can also set this heat map to be recurring. So say I want to create a brand new heat map every 30 days, and I set this to be recurring so that I create a brand new heat map every 30 days. So I almost get a different snapshot of data from every month. I can do that as well. Lastly is, kind of talking about some of the more advanced settings. Some websites have pop-ups, some don't, and some people, depends on the visitor, depends on the user rather. I know some Crazy Egg users who want to track the pop-ups within their heat map because they want to see how it impacts the visitor behavior. Some people don't want to track the pop-ups because they kind of see that as separate from the design of the page itself. And so you have that particular setting right here. You can also, by default, we track 100% of visits, so you can set that whereas a lot of other email providers don't. But you can also set to sample, say track 1 in 20 visits, which is a 5% sampling ratio. And lastly, there are options for tracking multiple pages with a heat map as well. I can track not just one page, I can set up URL tracking or wildcards or regular expressions or even tracking by name to basically aggregate multiple behavior from multiple pages into one heat map altogether. And that's especially helpful for, say, if you're in e-commerce and have a product listing page and you want to kind of put those all together because each individual page doesn't have a ton of traffic, but put together you kind of see how that template layout is performing. That's what that is really helpful for. You can also set up a heat map that'll collect for multiple pages, and you can see that here we can add individual pages here as well. You can also create heat maps for pages that use a shopping cart or for pages behind a login. And the way that you use this is with a Chrome extension. So say I go to my website that I want to analyze, and then I download and activate the Chrome extension for Crazy Egg. If I go to we call it page camera. And when you create a new heat map with page camera, we still use the old terminology here, a snapshot, but we should really change that to heat maps. Then I can click capture to catch that as a screenshot of the page. And then that'll basically take me back to Crazy Egg to finish creating the heat map for that particular page. And so, by default, you can just automatically create this without having to take a screenshot. But for pages behind a login, especially for, within a web app or pages for a shopping cart, for example, then we recommend using the page camera method instead. So that's how you create a heat map. Now, let's say that I want to go and analyze my real heat map data. This is a live heat map, which is currently tracking data right now. So you'll see here that within the heat map, we actually have multiple heat map formats available that'll help you see different things. So, for example, I have the traditional heat map right here, which is basically showing, what is the intensity of the click traffic. I can see also a scroll map. I can either show the scroll map by clicking the scroll map up here, which shows basically how far people are scrolling. You notice here that a lot of people are not scrolling or dropping off below what we call the fold. So below the fold, and the fold is basically the part of a page that you have to scroll past in order to see more of a page, right? And so you can imagine that everything above the fold is what I see immediately as soon as I see the page. And everything that's above a fold is what basically convinces people that it's worth scrolling down or interacting. And so it's worth paying a lot of attention to. You can also see the scroll map by overlaying it on the heat map by clicking the show scroll map icon in the bottom right here. So if I click that, I can actually overlay not just the color coding, but the percentage right next to my heat map. And so I can see right now, right? Like, oh, there's a ton of clicks above the fold, but those clicks, go down below the fold. But even so, we still see some content that despite being below the fold, not getting a lot of scrolls, it still gets clicks. And that might be worth putting above the fold, making sure that it gets more engagement. Another way you can view the data is with a confetti map. This is a view that shows not just aggregated clicks, but you can actually visualize these individual clicks, which especially given that we by default collect 100% of clicks, you could actually get pretty powerful here, right? Right? And you'll notice that a lot of these clicks are actually color coded. And the reason why it's color coded is because we actually include data filters within Crazy Egg heat maps here. So I can see, where is, which traffic is coming from, different referrers, new versus returning by country, by rage clicks and dead clicks, new versus returning, different UTM parameters, all these different things, right? And it's really helpful because maybe I want to focus on specific traffic from, say, the US only. And you'll see that when I select US only or exclude certain kinds of clicks, I can visualize what specifically US visitors are doing. And you'll notice is that like every time I update these filters, every single heat map is updating as well. And so as a result, you can apply these filters as much as you want. And this is really helpful because it means that if you want to focus on your good customers, or if you have different members of your team that focus on different markets or different campaigns, they can focus on the engagement that's relevant to them. Two more options for visualizing the data. We have a list where basically Crazy Egg actually goes through the HTML on your page and then just finds every single element, whether it's visible or not visible, and I can get the number of clicks specific to each element. And if I want to kind of go in and then further dive into the breakout for the different segments for each element, I can actually click that, which will take me to my overlay map. And then I can specifically visualize like, okay, each individual element, how many clicks did it get? And what is the breakdown? So say I remove that filter, I can visualize, how each click broke down by country, and I can click and view that for every individual element as well, which can be super helpful, even if I go to the header menu here, right? Um, so that's all the different heat map types. We also have the data filters available, obviously, but we also have the ability to filter by conversion events, right? Show me people who clicked my CTA, people who filled out my get a demo form, or added to cart, or successfully checked out even. You can add as many data filters as you want. So maybe I can be like, okay, show me just clicks of people who did click a buy now button, but did not convert on the sign up flow, right? I can add as many of those conversion filters as I want because heat maps are integrated with the conversions lead feature, which I'll show you later. Lastly, I can choose to look at this for different device types. I can filter all this data by date range. I can, of course, share that. I can, of course, share that data. I can, of course, share that data with people who don't have Crazy Egg logins, but who want to see that heat map report. Just like recordings, we also include an AI analysis, which basically will kind of give you the high level out of the box analysis of what this data is telling you. So it's telling me, for example, okay, you need to update the conversion tracking. Revenue reporting is dominated by the test goal. Users are trying to click an unclickable best e-commerce platforms block as well. So it's giving me not just high level analysis, but also giving me recommendations to how to improve these, whether it's tracking related or it's conversions related. Now, some of you might be asking, okay, how can I ask follow-up questions or kind of do more segmented analysis using the AI as well? And we'll get to that in a minute. But lastly, I want to show you basically is you have the ability to compare heat maps side by side. Say I wanted to, compare this with the mobile version of the this page, and I can do that here as well. So you see here, right? I can compare this side by side, or if, for example, I've created different heat maps for different variants of an A/B test, I can compare those. But lastly is if I want to export that data, then I can export these in different formats. I can export the heat map, the scroll map, confetti, and overlay in images, which you could either share as an image or you could throw that into a PowerPoint, for example. You can export that list report, which I showed you over here. You can export that as a CSV to analyze in a spreadsheet. But you can also export this in what we call a JSON file, which is for use with the AI. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit after we talk about the conversions. But basically, this is not available for all plans, but this is going to give you really rich data beyond what an MCP data limit is actually going to be able to provide. And this will allow you to do really deep, rich, segmented engagement and conversion analysis of your heat maps and recordings. And we're going to get to that after conversions because I want to kind of talk about how to get conversions data in there as well. But that's heat maps, right? And so again, if you want to understand what visitors are experiencing from your site and what they're doing, use recordings to zero in on specific visitors and use heat maps to kind of aggregate user behavior on particular pages. And then the third question you might want to answer is what do they want to achieve, right? What is the goal that we can drive them towards? And comparing against what they're already doing on their site, which a lot of the times, sometimes visitors have a certain thing they want to achieve, but they're not able to achieve it on the site, and so you may not be able to completely figure that out just from what they're doing. And the way we can answer that is through conversion tracking, it's through surveys, and it's through AI as well. So let's talk about conversions, right? Conversions are basically any high value event that generates a lot of value for your business, but you want to get visitors to take more of. So this could be, anything from something that's top of middle of funnel, like clicking on a campaign CTA, all the way to something bottom of funnel, like say filling out a get a demo for, or checking out. And so we've made it really easy to track as many of these as you need. So you can track, for example, if you already have Crazy Egg installed, you don't necessarily need to add more code to your site. You can track simply like, oh, if I want to track people who are clicking on a certain button on my homepage, I can put in the name of the homepage and then select the button that I want to track directly on here. Or say I want to track people who reach a certain page. This is especially helpful if I'm tracking something middle of funnel, like people getting to a product page, or maybe if I use like thank you pages or confirmation pages to track full conversions, I can use that as well. I can track form submissions using the same format. Just put in the name of the page where the form is, and then select the form on the page preview. I can also detect conversion events that are being tracked and sent and having data synced over to separately. So maybe I'm sending conversion data over to Google or Meta or TikTok. Crazy Egg can detect when that happens, and so you can just tell Crazy Egg, hey, like I know you can detect this, but whereas Crazy Egg, we by default won't track. We won't store rather conversion events that are sent to third-party platforms. But this is you telling us, hey, store that data because I want to be able to use that conversion data for analysis in Crazy Egg. You can track that data being sent to ad platforms. You can track it being sent to Shopify, say, for example, an add to carts or a checkout event, Squarespace, WooCommerce, Wix as well. I can also track this, and this is a newer feature. I can track basically any conversion event that's being sent to GA4 as long as you provide your GA4 measurement ID and the event name. And then you can track that as well. We also have the ability to track server-side conversions as well, and you can track this. Just view the support doc on our conversion tracking API, so you can do server-side conversion tracking. And if you're someone who likes to use this you a not just custom code snippets, but through a tag manager like a Google Tag Manager, you can trigger this using a custom HTML tag as well. So basically, this is a custom event code. So for every unique event trigger that you already have set up in Google Tag Manager, create a new conversion event for that trigger, and then map this particular conversion event code to that trigger. And then you can track these the same way you're tracking everything else in Google Tag Manager. Once you've set that up, then let's look at what reporting for this looks like, right? So once I have set up conversion tracking, I can get basic analytics for each of these conversions. I can actually set up notifications for every time that conversion event happens. So say I want to notify my sales team every time a Ghetto demo form gets filled out. I can set up a Slack notification, an email notification, an API endpoint, or I can even trigger Zapier automation as well, which can be pretty handy. I can also see the number of conversions that are happening by page for this given date range. And I can see now this is a new feature, the number of conversions by different audience segments, say refer by country, by UTM parameters, new versus returning, things like that. So this is conversion reporting that complements the reporting you already have in Web Analytics. So that's quantitative data. And top of that is, what do I want to understand? Like, okay, I want to hear and get feedback directly from my visitors. I can also use surveys for this. Now, the thing is, surveys it gets unlimited responses throughout all your, if you're on a Crazy Egg account, any Crazy Egg plan, you have unlimited responses, and you can deploy as many surveys as you want directly on your website without pushing them off your website experiences. So there's really no reason to be paying for this feature, right? With surveys, you can, browse templates from this library here to create surveys of, like, say, NPS scores. You can ask for like open-ended user feedback. You can ask multiple choice questions, things like that. A lot of you might have signed up for this webinar by like answering the pop-up survey, and I set up that survey myself. So you can also even use it to collect registrations or leads from people directly on your website. But if I want to create this from scratch, I can do that as well. And basically, what this will do is I can add as many questions as I want. Say I want to select a multiple choice question, say a yes or a no. Maybe I want to add another question collecting someone's email. I want to add another question asking for like a star rating, something like that. Every time I create this, I can get a preview on the right for what the question looks like. And I can also add in a thank you message as at the end as well. I can set, some of these questions to optional, but also interestingly, I can not only customize the questions themselves, but can actually also add conditional branching. Basically, where I might want to say, okay, if the answer is yes, then I want them to show the next question. If the answer is no, then I want you to show the last question or close a survey or send them to a new URL, say a support doc. I can even send an email to someone or just send them to the end of the message, right? So I can add conditional branching to kind of create a custom choose your own adventure experience within a survey. But this is also helpful because if, say, for example, I'm collecting leads for my sales team, I can have this automatically collect the email address so that my sales team can follow up. Same thing with, say, creating support tickets or things like that. So even though the main use case of this is collecting user research and feedback, they can totally use this to collect, sales leads or for your support team as well. So, if you wanted to say have Zapier auto create these tickets in your help desk system, or just have this directly go to Slack so that your support team can work from there, you can use this and it's already included in your account. So a really powerful feature. On top of that, you can have surveys trigger on certain device types, on certain pages, on certain traffic sources. You can have it sample. You can also customize the appearance so that it has different colors, different locations of page, and you can customize not just which pages it appears on, but you can target it based on certain behaviors. As soon as the page loads, when someone scrolls past the fold, after a certain number of seconds, different things like that, which makes it really powerful because sometimes you want to target people who are showing engagement that maybe having trouble finding the thing that they're looking for, or you can maybe target people who are showing a lot of friction and therefore get information from them before they leave. Once you've started collecting survey results, you'll start to get response data here. And you can, of course, just like conversion events, you can set up a notification for every time someone completes a survey. You can, of course, download, the survey results to a CSV as well. But we also get custom analytics for that survey as well. So you'll be able to see like data visualizations, some sentiment analysis, for the survey responses. You also get some AI analysis, which is all especially helpful for, say, like, text-based response options. But it'll summarize some of the key takeaways from this as well. So you can immediately kind of like say, I want to focus on responses just for the last 7 days. The AI will rerun, and then as a result, I can just quickly get new takeaways from the AI without having to kind of like perform data analysis every single time, which is super helpful. Right. And lastly, I mentioned, right, is how do you find out what do they want to achieve? And I mentioned, earlier, right, in that when you have heat maps open, that you have this option to export that heat map data directly for AI analysis. And that heat map data, the reason why I wanted to cover conversions as well is because that AI export, which you'll see right here, includes conversions data as well. And the thing to understand here, right, is kind of, maybe let's take a zoom back and talk about how I think about AI for use of data analytics. The thing about humans and when it comes to data analytics is that we often need data simplified before we can understand it. And if you look at most analytics tools, that's essentially what they're doing, right? Maybe we have a heat map to help me visualize the clicks. Maybe I have a table to kind of aggregate all of these like pages, right? This is an aggregation. It's a way of simplifying data so that I can understand at a high level. But when you simplify things, you get rid of a lot of the nuance, a lot of the segmentation. And the reality is like there's a trade-off because you need to simplify data so human can understand it. But when you simplify data, you get rid of a lot of the nuance. But what AI is really great at is at recognizing patterns in a ton of complicated data. And so as a result, we want you to use AI to complement the data your analysis you're already doing by feeding the AI the data it needs to perform deep analysis so it can examine every user interaction so you don't have to, and doing this in a way that doesn't burn through too many tokens. And so when you get this AI export, the data export kind of looks something like this. And basically, it's going through every single click on every single element, every visit. So much data that you can't analyze it, I can't analyze it, but an AI totally can. And the AI exports will help AI analyze data on a bunch of things, these, different variables, these different metrics, but some of the things that I haven't listed here as well, right? Scroll depth, clicks by element, conversion events, errors, bounces, also the page layout, what the copywriting says, country, new versus returning, things like that. The AI is able to handle any analysis, any questions you want to ask on this as well. And so, for example, these are the kind of prompts that I think are really helpful to get started here, right? So, for example, this one I have for heat maps. Analyze this website behavior data to help me optimize the page. What content gets engagement? Was there friction? And what converts? And I ran an analysis here using a bunch of this as well. And the thing to note here is that it's for a specific heat map, so it's gonna focus on that particular heat map. But we have data on all the conversions that happened from visitors to that page at any other time in the session as well. And you notice here, right? Claude was able to go in and say, okay, it identified this as crazy egg. It provided a diagnosis of a headline problem, gave a summary of the top friction elements, and then kind of and analyze the scroll depth, conversion analysis, things like that as well. And then instead of one shotting a prompt, I asked it to create a list of page optimizations for A/B testing, prioritized by impact and confidence. And boom, it was able to essentially give me a prioritized A/B testing roadmap as well. But maybe, for example, you want to analyze a specific recording for this as well. And the answer is you can also export, if you're on the right plan, you can also export recordings for AI analysis as well. We've poorly labeled it. It says export as JSON, which is a very technical way of reporting of labeling it. But if you export that, this is for AI analysis as well. So if I go back to Claude, I actually asked Claude earlier, like, hey, help me understand this data from a website session recording. What engages or converts a visitor, and where's the friction? And it actually was able to go through, reconstruct a timeline based off of all of this, including scroll depth, and then basically gave a summary of what it was seeing here as well. So, whereas we've made the AI analysis to be as easy for as many people, as many crazy egg users as possible to understand it. If you're a really professional user, if you're good at using AI and you want to ask a lot of follow-up questions, use Claude, even create prototypes, then we've given you data that's been processed so that AI can analyze it really deeply and do have as deep of analysis as you want. And so that's basically what I really recommend using this AI export for. Now, last couple of questions, right? So, we've identified who your visitors are, what they're doing on your site, what they're looking to achieve. But the next question might be what friction is getting in their way, right? You have your visitor, you have a goal, you have friction getting in their way. How can you identify that in above beyond just what the AI is telling you? And there's two features that are specific to that as well, funnels and errors. Let's talk about funnels, right? Because it's relevant to conversions. A funnel is, kind of like, okay, how many people are going through, say, the top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel, say, getting to your website, clicking a CTA, adding something to cart, and then checking out, right? Each of these is a certain conversion event, which might present a barrier, which could cause people to drop off, right? So which drop-off points are causing the most people to drop off, and thus which pages, all parts of my site should I be optimizing? So funnels works off of the conversion events you already set up. And the good news is that like I can change the order of the conversion events in that funnel at any point. So really, as long as you've already set up conversion event tracking sooner rather than later, you can have as much historical data as you need. So I really recommend set up your conversion tracking sooner rather than later before you need the data, so that you have historical data to look at when you need to. And then you can do this kind of exploratory sandbox style analysis. But I can change all these different the order of these conversion events. I can focus on different uh, date ranges, for example. I can see how this each conversion trended over time, and I can get a summary for the basically the number of conversions I got for each conversion event. But long story short, being funnels is a really helpful tool for figuring out, okay, where are people encountering friction? So I can then go to the heat map of recordings that are relevant to that friction point and then do some more focused analysis. Essentially, it helps you figure out which questions to be asking so that you can go and ask those questions or ask the AI those questions. The other feature which is helpful for finding friction is errors. And this is basically, a log with technical metadata for every JavaScript or, HTML error that we're finding on your website. Say I go for the last 30 days, and I click into each of these errors, I can not only get metadata, technical information for each of those errors, I can get metrics on how often each error is recording, but this also links to recordings because ultimately it's not just the technical information is helpful for figuring out what error is happening, but figuring out when visitors are encountering it so you can replicate it is ultimately the most helpful way to fix an error, right? Or to prioritize how important it is. And so each error report has a link to all of our relevant recordings we have on that particular error. So I can see the details on the timestamp, the visitor, and I can click recording and uh, and see the error being replicated here as well. I notice here, and I forgot to mention this earlier, is that by default we automatically tag a lot of recordings by different kind of engagement types, right? Maybe there was a dead click, there was a rage click, or there was a particular error. All the recordings can be filtered based off of this as well, and of course we capture that as filters for heat maps, and of course we include that data within the AI export as well. Great. So one last question, right? Is okay, we've analyzed the visitors, we're trying to figure out what gaps or friction is getting in their way to the conversion event they're trying to achieve. And so the last question is, okay, how can you convert them better? We of course just used AI to come up with, a list of ideas that are worth testing. To see if it improves things, but ultimately these are just ideas, and the only way to know for sure if it's something that's going to help is to test it. And the way that we can test this is through um, is through A/B testing, through CTAs, and through audience targeting as well. And I'm going to go through CTAs first because actually I think this is a kind of a quick and dirty, easy way to run initial tests with messaging, especially. So CTA might be something that you've already seen in Crazy, right? Uh, maybe it's a banner bar across the top of a website. Maybe it's a pop-up or things like that, right? It's a way of popping up a promotion, a campaign, or a certain kind of messaging up on your page without having to modify the page directly. And so I can create these from a template or I can create these from scratch. But essentially, it means that I can, for example, pop up, say, okay, want to see, say I can ask like, oh, say, want to see product name in action, or I want to say like, hey, sign up for our webinar. Or maybe I can use a CTA, like say 30% off new products, something, right? So you'll notice here how, like, I can test new forms of messaging. I can quickly even announce a webinar or announce a promotion, things like that. Quick and dirty testing. I can have these CTAs open when you click them, open up a new tab or send an email. I can also have these trigger off of specific pages, specific device types, and I can format the appearance of that CTA. And of course, just like surveys, I can have this trigger based off certain behaviors. Once I've set up that CTA, then I'm going to be able to get metrics on that CTA is basically how many views, how many clicks, and how many conversions it's driven. The way I tend to compare this is basically I've run a bunch of different CTAs on a certain page. I'll then compare the data and get the click-through rate for each CTA that was on a given page. And as a result, with the click-through rate, I can basically determine which CTAs, which campaigns, or which messages were getting the highest traction with, because that tells me which offers I should be testing for campaigns or for landing page A/B testing as well. So that's CTAs for quick and dirty testing. But if I want to do the really clean testing, that's of course what A/B testing is for. And so with A/B testing, right, I can set up a new A/B test based off, say, a URL redirect. Say, this would be basically if I send people to quicksprout.com. And then I can send them to a new test variant, say quicksprout.com/test. And I can add as many variants as I want. Your redirects are most helpful for when you're doing a really big page redesign, like say changing your pricing structure or things like that, because ultimately just ensures that it's going to load very quickly. But if you're doing very quick tests, like say changing a headline, changing a button color or changing a link, for example, I recommend using the page editor because this is really helpful for setting up tests that are small without even necessarily having touch code. You can even create tests using the page editor if you know HTML or know just a little bit. And so, for example, if I set up a page editor, then I can set who should see this test. And I can also, if you're on Pro or Enterprise plans, or if you've added this as an add-on, then I can set A/B test to target specific audience types. Say I want to target only people where the UTM source is Facebook, and I want to only target new visitors, for example. I can apply to target just that particular audience. And this is a newer feature, so you can be forgiven if you didn't realize it was there. Once I've set this up, then it'll bring up the visual page editor, so I can start basically designing what the page variants will look like in the A/B test. Say, for example, I want to simplify this to, oh, welcome to QuickSprout. I can format the text differently. I can change, the color, something like that. I can even add hyperlinks. Or for example, I can see like AI suggestions for different copy. I can change different colors of a text or a background. I can even hide the element. I can, click and drag it to move it around. And I can even directly edit the HTML. And directly editing the HTML is, like I know a little bit of HTML, but it's really powerful because it means that I can do very custom changes, right? So say I wanted um simplify this to say start a business. I can simplify that directly with an HTML. I can also change header menus here as well, right? So maybe I want to change say is go through all this HTML, and then I want to change the text. I can do that if I'm willing to go through all the HTML code as well. I can set it to interactive mode so I can kind of preview what users' experience would be like. I can also preview the changes in a new tab so I can just see what this looks like from a user's perspective. I can also if I want to preview this on different device types, then I can actually change the device type. I can change the screen size so I can see what this looks like on, say, different iPhone resolutions, for example. And if I want to add new variants or basically delete variants because I didn't like what I did, I can add as many variants as I want by clicking create new variant on the variant selector down here. And I can click on the garbage can icon here to delete previous variants. Um, once that's done, I can then go to the next step to choose a particular conversion I want to track. Now, this will help me choose the primary conversion I want to track, but I'll show you in a second that you can track as many conversions as you want for historical analytics on an A/B test as well. Now, say I click start now, right? And I go click next. This will then send me to the traffic split setting. So I can have Crazy set this automatically, or I can set this to say 50-50. I can have this go to 80-20, something like that. And lastly is it'll give me the option to review all of these settings before I publish the A/B test. And that'll include by default creating a heat map for each variant of this test. I recommend creating a heat map because it means that not only will you get heat map data for every single one of these page variants, for heat maps that are for pages that are in an A/B test, we'll actually get an additional menu within the heat map so you can quickly toggle between different variants. And when it comes to the AI analysis, what I actually recommend is export the AI export for each of those page variants, throw them into Claude or ChatGPT, and then tell Claude or ChatGPT, this is heat map data for different variants within an A/B test. Compare and contrast the data for these different pages and tell me what is driving the different engagement and conversion performance. And that way you can have the AI just do the comparative analysis for you. So you don't just get the high level conversion reporting, the high level traffic reporting, but you can actually get analysis on what's driving that different engagement and conversion performance. But speaking of conversion performance, right? So as soon as I've set up an A/B test, I'll get metrics on which ones are converting best, including statistical significance indicators. If this were a live A/B test, I would actually have the ability to edit existing variants, add new variants, delete existing variants, change the traffic split. As a practice, I don't recommend changing settings during an A/B test, but you can if you want to. And I mentioned earlier that, okay, there's a default conversion event that you can track, but I can track any given conversion event retroactively as well, as long as I set up that conversion event to be tracked. So don't worry about, setting up an A/B test. Sometimes with an A/B test, you aim to change one conversion event, but it ends up impacting another conversion event. Or it ends up turning out that like, okay, you can see results for a top of funnel conversion event, but not for the bottom of funnel. And that's fine. As long as you set up those conversion events ahead of time, then you can track whatever you want for those. And that data will be within the AI export flows as well. And lastly, I mentioned, right, is the concept of audience targeting. Now, if you have audience targeting through the pro or enterprise plans or through an add-on, then you have the ability to basically use A/B tests. You can actually rig these either to do personalization or audience segmentation. Just set up a new A/B test and then have it hit 100% of people, send 100% of people to the variance for a given audience. Or you can set up different A/B tests targeted at different audience segments. And the kind of way that I recommend doing this is through kind of like branching, right? So say, for example, I have inbound traffic to a certain page. I can send, okay, all the people for whom the traffic, the referrer source is Google, send them the A/B test one and then test these two different pages. After that, send all the returning visitors to A/B test two and send them to these two other pages. And then you can test what messaging works for them. And then lastly, you can send everyone else who visits this page to A/B test three and then check what page performs best for all of them. Because ultimately, increasingly, we're going to find that different kinds of messaging, different offers rather work for different work for different visitors, work for different demographics or personas, work for different people in the buying journey. And so, therefore, you want to figure out which messaging, which creative, which page layouts work best for them. And audience targeting helps you test that out.